Hello and welcome to the Vorthos Cast. I'm Jay Anelli.
And I'm Brian Dawes.
And that's it. So Carrie is only going to be joining us for story podcasts. Lorelai and Chris are both on well-deserved vacations. Chris wanted you all to know that he was so upset that there was no card for Old Rutstein in this set that he flew to Seattle and he's going to break into WotC headquarters to give them a piece of his mind.
Good luck, Chris.
Good luck, Chris. Let us know how gentle security is for you. So this week we're going to talk about the flavor gems of Midnight Hunt. So this set was pretty cool. I mean, honestly, I think this is my favorite Innistrad set from a purely aesthetic Vorthos perspective. Like, I liked Eldritch Moon because I like cosmic horror type stuff, but I think this one is my favorite overall over a lot of the other ones with what they've done. So let's talk about that a little bit. Well, first of all, what about you, Brian? How do you feel about this one?
I guess this one seems like it's better, but then again, like, I like the hope aspect of Innistrad because, hey, I'm a Celestia mage, so you get what you get. But I guess this one's not bad. I like it more than the last visit, but considering how some of the flavor text is leaning, I'm not sure that I'm going to like the ending to the story here, so we'll see what happens. But
it might get worse before it gets better, or it might just everything bad happens all the time and nothing good happens. It could go either way.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. So what's really cool about this one is the Halloween or Samhain theme going on everywhere. So this is a very witchy set. So we talked about it a little bit, but you get to see some of that stuff in the floating candles and things like Candle Grove Witch, Candle Trap, Candlelit Cavalry. It's a nice new visual motif for the witch's magic and the Harvesttide magic that's really refreshing for a third visit to Innistrad. Like, this is exactly the shot in the arm Innistrad needed to be creatively interesting moving forward.
Definitely.
We also see a lot of masks. There's Hedge Witch's Mask, Ritual of Hope, Mask of Gristlebrand, and basically anything that shows the Harvesttide Festival shows people in these masks, which have the similar function as they did in real life, and to scare off, evil spirits.
I'm really hoping that works for them, but I have a feeling it doesn't.
There's also a lot of jack-o'-lanterns. There is Festival Crasher. You get to see some of them as well in Crossroads Candle Guide. You see a lot of pumpkins everywhere as well. And there's even a card called Jack-o'-lantern that is kind of lording over a bunch of pumpkin pies, which is kind of hilarious. So that was also another really cool theme to see throughout.
Pumpkin pie. Do you have a favorite pie?
Do I have a favorite pie? It's not pumpkin, I'll tell you that. No, apple pie. I am an apple pie fanatic. Give me an apple pie with some whipped cream, and I am all good. All good. It's so good. Pumpkin pie, no thank you.
Yeah, I'm more of a roasted pumpkin seed guy, but I'm not a huge pumpkin pie person either. I'm more key lime.
Roasted pumpkin seeds are good. I'll give you that. So let's talk a little bit. So what else I liked about this set is, I'm a bit of a horror movie fan. This dipped into more than the classic Universal monsters realm of the original Innistrad. It did not do the cosmic horror of the Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon. This is the B-movie horror set. This is the 1950s radiation panic set. And there's a lot of great examples of this too. And there's also like some folk horror. So the Blob is heavily represented here with all of the oozes, like Sludge Monster consuming Blob and Slogurk the Overslime. So the Blob is a very famous movie about, I don't know how to tell you about this, but it's about a blob, an ooze thing that overtakes a small town.
Shocked.
Which is what happens in a lot of these. There's also a reference to them, exclamation point. If you don't know anything about them, it is one of the early irradiated insect kind of films. Basically, the card Rise of the Ants shows you in the movie itself, a bunch of ants get irradiated and, again, destroy a small town. It's amazing how much that happens in horror movies.
No spider people here.
I just remember Command and Conquer Red Alert, the original, had a special mission that you could, a special couple missions where you could fight giant ants again with your army that you had to like access a special way. And I always remember thinking that was so cool and looked up like what that was based on later. And that was them. There's also a lot of like Ghostbusters influence here as well. Like the Geist mages that we see, or the necro alchemists that we see are very much channeling the Ghostbusters now. They got a little bit of they got a little bit of acclaim after their role during the travails, so they're able to practice a little more openly, and you can really see the Ghostbuster influences more steadily here. There's also a really great Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a very classic slasher film called the Meat Hook Massacre. And then there's Flesh Taker, which haunts many a Magic player's dreams now. But that really takes a lot from the slasher horror genre, because it is not a minotaur; it is a man in a bull hood with a meat cleaver, and it is not great.
Not gonna lie, when I saw that art, I was like, that can't be a real Magic card. Like, that art is so creepy, and it's like, it's not even anything like blatantly overt. It's just like, something is off about the art, and it's just like, ugh.
Honestly, to me it's way scarier than like anything from Eldritch Moon.
I agree.
One of the things that makes like slasher horror so appealing, I don't want to call it appealing, but so scary, is how real it can be. You know, like, these are people, not monsters. It's easier to dissociate with monsters than it is with just a psychotic human being who wants you dead.
Yeah.
We got a new Delver of Secrets that pulls more directly from the Cronenberg The Fly film with Jeff Goldblum. It is very much more campier than the original. The original Delver kind of turned him into just literally a giant insect. This one definitely pulled more from The Fly. There's even a machine he's getting out of after he turned, rather than simply drinking a potion and turning into this insect thing. But there's been multiple references to this. Every set has had like a Delver of Secrets evolution. So he went from the insect to like a whole other thing too. We see a lot of folk horror. I can call out the Wicker Man, especially because they have a lot of effigies, like Raise the Effigy, where they burn down a big werewolf. But a lot of the witchy rituals also have kind of deliberately so, kind of a creepy vibe. You're not quite sure whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So, and folk horror influences, quite a bit throughout this set as well, which is good because it's the kind of thing Innistrad needed. There's also some cryptid sightings, which is pretty cool. Shadow Beast sighting is adorable because it's basically Bigfoot. It's the blurry photo someone catches a Bigfoot. There's some other examples as well. There's like a Root Vine Walker. I can't remember the name of that card off the top of my head. And then Old Stick Fingers is in that same like creepy cryptid urban legend vibe. And we also get a lot of like haunting horror this time around. We've seen that in the past, but it's mostly it confines itself to the usual, like, oh, a ghost is in the house somewhere. But this time around we get like Poppet Stitcher, who really pulls on like the creepy doll horror stuff, like Chucky, or if you're a fan of Goosebumps, Slappy, or the more recent Annabelle films. Like, creepy dolls are always just terrible. But it was really cool that they had that included in here, because they've had creepy dolls before, but these are especially out there. Heirloom mirrors play a big part in a lot of horror, especially in terms of like demonic possessions and things.
Candyman.
Yeah, I listed Candyman here because Candyman's a particularly famous example of, you know, if you say his name, what is it? You say his name 5 times?
It's 3 times in front of a mirror and he shows up.
Yeah.
Just got a new movie.
Yeah, it did. I haven't checked it out yet, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, there's also like there's a lot of urban legends around that with like Bloody Mary and things like that as well. And then Hostel, which is just an amazing name. Hostile Hostel. You got to really enunciate there to not sound like a person who is stuttering a lot like I am right now. But that one really gives a lot of Shining vibes. You know, there's haunted houses, but haunted hotels are on a different level. And it was just, I really love all of these. There's another one, the one with the mask on the wall. I can't remember off the top of my head. Gave me some real Evil Dead vibes of the deer head that comes to life in the Evil Dead 2. Yeah, and then the whole house comes alive. So there's a lot of really cool horror references, but we also get a lot of legendaries this time around.
So yeah, the first one that I thought was really cool was Adeline. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, Adeline. We're spilling the Cathar. She looks really cool in her art, and we got our first. We got a glimpse of her in the 3rd story, or was it second? The 2nd story. Really cool. Love the art on both the normal art and the I guess showcase art or whatever they're calling it now. The black and white.
There's like the Eternal Night variants.
Yeah, that's
something like that. Yeah, I forget exactly what they call it too. Adeline's pretty cool. She and Chandra have this, flirtatious thing going on that does not end in number 3. But yeah, Adeline is very cool. I'm very excited for y'all to see more of her in the story going forward. Kay Arsenal Rivera did a just amazing job with this story. We also got Lear, Disciple of the Drowned, which is one of these sea god cultists that we've heard about for a long time, in the same vein as like Runo Stromkirk worshipping these deep sea gods. We don't know much else about him just yet, although I'm fairly certain the new Legends of Innistrad article just came out, so you can go check that out on the Mothership if you want to learn more about him. We got a new Gisa as well. There's not a whole lot to say there other than she is paired this time with a character named Wilhelt, who is and this is a very entertaining twist. Wilhelt has like a crush on Gisa, and so Geralf has basically wants nothing else to do with Gisa right now. We know that from last time. And so now she's being pestered by this zombie suitor, and he's the one she's going to war with her zombies now. She can't even remember his name.
And she's effectively like lording over the ruins of Thraben because it got destroyed effectively. So super cool.
You want to talk about Jadar? How do you say his name?
I was gonna say Jadar, but I don't know that
Well, there's Jadar, Ghoul-Caller of Nephalia, so we've gotten introduced to some more necromancer type characters. Before this, it was really just Gisa and Geralf on the cards, and Ludovic. But now we're getting more characters that are more legendary characters that are involved in this. We also got Jaren, Corrupted Bishop, who is the Skursdag cultist bishop. And on the flip side, we got a new Ormendal, which is the demon who we talked about him last time. I'm not going to get into him.
Yeah.
There's also Dennick, pious apprentice who becomes a pious spirit after he dies. We actually see him in the third story. His family has some involvement with the Moon Silver Key. There's Florian, the kind of flamboyant Voldaran scion. I'm not sure if he's actually meant to be like Olivia's son or not, or if he's just like the most popular. Like if something were to happen to Olivia, he'd be the one taken over for the scion, or if he's just a random Voldaran vampire. Who knows? We got a new Ludovic, Necrogenius. This Ludovic card is really interesting. And on the back, it's got this new creation of his called Olag, who has a kind of interesting backstory because he was created to be the ultimate killing machine. But Oleg doesn't want to kill anybody. He's kind of peaceful. And so Ludovic locked him in a basement, basically. But there's another voice saying that he's going to let him out soon. We got Laisa, Forgotten Archangel, back. I'm not going to talk much more about her. We talked about her in the past. She was the fourth angel sister who died, and now she's back. So yeah, she's cool. I like her a lot. You may or may not see more of her. I'm not going to get into it.
Plead the fifth.
Old Stick Fingers is that cryptid kind of character I talked about. It's very creepy, the kind of monster you might see in like a Blair Witch Project style found footage movie, like just out of the corner of your eye or something. We also got Rem Carolus, who is awesome. He is the Van Helsing of the plane, so he's just an utter badass. I really like this guy, so I'm glad he got a card. I talked about Slogurk a little earlier. We got Vadrik, the Astral Archmage, who has kind of taken over the Genric role as the Lunar Scholar. He was friends with Genric back in the day. And we also got a card for the Celestis, which is this ancient artifact that helps, that is part of what the Dawnheart Coven is trying to use in order to set right the balance of day and night that's been thrown off since the Travails.
Just want to say that Vadrik looks like Lunar Mystic, who got a promotion. He got his own legendary card this time.
He does, yeah. He looks just like Lunar Mystic. Yeah, that's probably where they pulled the idea from. So a few others. Brian, did you want to go into some of these? Because you listed some of those.
There's Catilda, who plays a key role in the story. So we'll probably learn more about her as we do our story reviews.
She's the head of the Dawnheart Coven. Yep.
And there's Tovalar, which we will also have a lot of story about. Oh, Sereth, the Viper's Fang.
So Sereth, we got a story about where she was paired against... what's the other one's name? She's not in the set itself, but I think she's one of the commander characters. Where she was set against the person who's like in charge, like the mayor of the festival. Lenore, the Autumn Sovereign. And Will Helt, we mentioned earlier. There's also Eloise, Nephalia Sleuth, who is a neat character that we may or may not see more of. Kyler, Sigardian Emissary. And I think that was it for the new legendaries. We don't know too much about Kyler or Eloise just yet. They might also be in the new legends, so you can check it out there. We don't need to go into that here. All right, do you want to talk about Beloved Beggar?
Sure. So, Beloved Beggar is one of my favorite cards in the new set just because of the flavor text. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a Celestia Mage and I'm not super big into horror, so these kind of cards where they tell a story about someone growing from the experience or showing some hope in light of the dark world that we're in. I love the flavor of Beloved Beggar where, on Innistrad, you never, like, when I think of Innistrad, like, generosity and charity are not the first things that comes to mind at all. So seeing this card and then seeing what happens after this beggar dies and he decides to forgo the blessed sleep and protect the town is something that really resonates with me. And I really love the story that this card tells.
There are quite a few of those that are really good. These Disturb cards are frequently good. There's one that is very clearly I'm blanking on the name. A Christmas Tale. Scrooge. There's one that's very clearly a Scrooge, where on one side he's like a misanthrope, and on the other side he's like a generous spirit. It's very cute.
Yeah, like all these disturbed cards make me super happy. There's also Bereaved Survivor, showing that this woman who's lost her sister and is willing to grow, and on the back side of her card she's a Cathar, and she's like exuding strength from growing from the horrors that she's experienced. Like I said, cards like this make me super happy, and are the few things that make me like this plane a little bit more than I would otherwise.
That there's light on this otherwise dark plane.
Yeah. Next notable card for me is like Fateful Absence. Where's Papa Markov? Why he not in his coffin? What's going on? I think we'll find out.
I'll plead the fifth.
We'll find out in the next set, but it's like I felt like that card was a really big tease in a set where I wasn't expecting anything of the sort. So, really interested to see where that goes. But yeah, like things like Lunarch Marshal, or I'm sorry, Lunarch Veteran, also shed some more light on the plane where, I thought people had kind of switched wholesale to Sigarda, but there's still people out there that still believe in Avacyn despite all the things of the travail, and it's interesting to see. And, it makes sense considering how people are sometimes really rooted in their faith. They see the fact that sometimes their faith isn't really rooted in the best places. They still look for the hopeful part of their, like the key parts of their religion, as far as the things that are worth fighting for. And even if their deity or their source of strength isn't around anymore, or isn't what they thought it was, they can still look for the better parts of their religion that are worth embodying, like the hope or the strength and the well-being that their religion was meant to bring to them.
So I think what you're getting at there, Brian, is Shadows over Innistrad was really harsh on the faith aspect of Innistrad, and it is nice to see this time around that faith is such an important part of the plane, and it's not kind of cynical faith either. There are all these things that people turn to, like you mentioned with Beloved Beggar, like community, the witches and Grindranu, or I forget exactly what their faith is around, but the Sigardian sects, the Avacynians, like it's everyone is holding on to something that is helping them get through this long night.
Yeah. So Vanquish the Horde is the next card that I really took an interest to, because we've seen a couple instances of Audric showing up, but we don't see a lot of him in the set, as in, where's his card? I need to know, Wizards. Where's Audric, though?
Man, it's a shame we won't be visiting Innistrad again for like months and months.
I know, Jay, but
5 years. It's a 5 years minimum between sets, so maybe he'll have a set next time. Who knows? A card next set. Who knows?
He was my favorite character from the last couple of sets, and I love his cards as well, so can't wait to see the next card. Maybe in the next set. Who knows? Arrogant Outlaw is a really interesting story card as well, because it's flavor text. Basically hints at the fact that the Falconwrath bloodline has been effectively gutted by the Eldrazi scourge, basically, and it's down to its dregs. And I'm really interested to see what becomes of them in the next set.
Yeah, this time around we got a lot of werewolf lore. We got these new dyers and other stuff. We don't get too much on the vampires, because the next set, Crimson Vow, is clearly much more focused on the vampires than this one is. So there's probably more in there about what's going on with all the vampire houses. But yeah, the Falconwraths, for those who don't remember or weren't around, they really got decimated by the travails. They were the vampire house or the vampire bloodline that most succumb to Emrakul's influence. So most of them got turned into like Eldrazi horror vampires that have since been killed off. There are a few more cards I wanted to outline before we wrap up for today. Croaking Counterpart is this kind of whimsical. It's a frog in a Cathar suit, or it's just amazing. Like with all the witchy themes going on, like a person getting duplicated as a frog or being turned into a frog or whatever is just kind of like. I've seen people mention like this is more at home in like Eldraine, and I mean, yeah, because it's involved in a lot of fables, but also, you know, Innistrad could also use some whimsy, and I just really loved this card simply because of that kind of whimsical feeling. I mean, it's like, gives me the feeling of like Throg. If for those of you who don't know who Throg is, it's Thor as a frog. That it was basically split off into his own character because he's amazing. He's got his own little Mjolnir and everything. It's adorable.
It's great.
But anyway, Croaking Counterpart is just adorable. I love it. There's another one where we see it's like one of the commander cards that's only in the set boosters. But we see the Gitrog monster on it, but just as a little frog looking at himself in the future. That one's really adorable. Rotten Reunion is a decaying American Gothic painting, which is really great. Champion of the Perished is a great pun and play on. I love, so if you don't know this about me, I love Planar Chaos. I love like color shifted cards from Planar Chaos that are like flavorfully related to one another still. So Champion of the Perished and Champion of the Parish is just, I love that so much. But also Faithful Mending is that for faithless looting. So you see them putting the shrine back together again in Faithful Mending. And it's also like a flashback that basically undoes what Faithless Looting did. It's very great. The last thing I want to mention before we call it for this episode is Siphon Insight. So Siphon Insight is one of our first glimpses at clothing styles that are not the typical Innistrad we've seen so far. Not the typical 15 belt buckles and leather everywhere and all that good stuff. You know, she's wearing like a Mediterranean belly dancer's outfit, basically. She's a vampire Princess Jasmine. But what I like about it is we have gotten hints for a long time that there are other cultures across the sea from the Innistrad we know. We have never really seen any of them until basically this card, which is a vampire in a ship. She also has along her the dress on the bottom the same kind of cult symbol that we saw a lot of for the sea god cults in Shadows of Innistrad and Eldritch Moon, the circle with like the 3 little J's coming underneath it. So that was I thought that was pretty cool. I'm hopeful that we see like more cultures on Innistrad going forward. The one thing I always wanted to see is the other kinds of werewolves that exist across the sea that we were told about way back in the first Innistrad and have yet to see. So that'll about do it. Brian, you want to move on to final thoughts?
Sure.
All right. My final thought is that I recently rewatched all the Matrix movies with my wife. And the first one and the third one, the special effects hold up really well. The second one, it's like Gumby fights left and right. The special effects do not hold up well at all. It might be a better movie than the third movie, but yeah, it's a whole lot. I'm very interested to see where the fourth movie goes. I liked them when I was younger, and then they felt so overplayed. I must have watched them like 5-6 times maybe each, that I was just like sick of them by a certain point. But digging back into them like 2 decades later, they're nice. They're a lot better than I remember. And especially knowing now what I didn't know about the influences then, especially with the first Matrix and some of the like trans allegories, it's very, very much more obvious these days. They're good movies.
Yeah, it's funny because that was my mom's favorite movie when I was a kid. And I liked it too, so we watched a lot of it just because, like, I liked the violence of it, and she was of the opinion that there was a lot of religious things that you could take out of it, but I wasn't. I was just in it for the action. But we watched a lot of it. I'm pretty sure that might be the movie that I've seen the most in my entire life, the first Matrix.
There definitely was a lot about faith in those movies too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, my final thought is that sometimes fandom needs to be divorced from the actual content. Don't be afraid to partake in a content just because the fandom is toxic. That can be said for a lot of things, Magic included. If you enjoy something, enjoy it. Don't worry about what other people are saying or thinking about it if you don't want to be involved with the fandom, because a lot of the times you can miss out on a lot of cool things. There's a lot of stuff going on with Critical Role right now where they're implementing rules about how you can use their IP, which, was completely expected if eventually, since they started selling stuff on their shop or whatever. But, even for other non-Critical Role IPs, don't be afraid to jump into something just because the fandom is toxic. Don't involve yourself with the fandom.
That is a very good point, Brian, because I think outside of the Magic community, and I have significantly withdrawn my presence from once being a moderator of the largest Magic fan site because I'm an idiot, an eventual admin of that site, God help me. I have really withdrawn, and I think the most I talk about Magic is on this Discord, and like for other fandoms that I enjoy, I don't participate at all. Like, I don't want to know what anyone has to say about Star Wars. Oh my god!
Oh yeah, that is so much worse.
Like,
Jesus.
I don't even talk to people in real life about that, and if I don't know them well, right? Like, oh my god. I agree.
Like, I don't participate in any forums or anything like that. It's one of those things where I'll sometimes watch random TikToks about D&D or Critical Role or things like that. But if comments are toxic, I'm just not going to participate. And don't be afraid to have that viewing of things, because sometimes it's just not worth it. You can miss out on a lot of cool things just because some of the people who enjoy it as well maybe aren't super. They're just toxic. I was trying to find a good way to say it, but sometimes people are just toxic, and you need to ignore them. So,
yeah, I'd say almost everything I enjoy. I don't talk to people about unless I already know them very well. Yeah, I definitely don't talk with strangers on the internet about it. But if you do want to talk with strangers on the internet in a small community that is very supportive, that is very even-keeled, I would say, not prone to a lot of hyperbole, not prone to a lot of the kind of toxic negativity or even toxic positivity that can accompany these kinds of fandom communities, you should check out our Discord, which you can join as a member of our Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/thevorthoscast. And how was that? Was that a smooth transition there, Brian?
That was great. Perfect.
How I told everyone about the patreon.com/thevorthoscast?
Yep.
And how they could support us in, our endeavors and keeping this Discord a lively community and keeping a great podcast coming to them every week. I didn't actually say that part. I said it just now, though.
Yeah, but you're nailing it. You're killing it right now.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. This has been the Vorthos Cast.